All right, everybody, just take a moment to relax, breathe. It's not the end of the world. Stop worrying about the stock market. Stop worrying about it. Everyone is trying to go off and act like the stock market is in this complete crash. It's going to be a great recession, a depression, and the whole world is crashing down. All right. The only people who are peddling fear over the stock market right now, especially over the coronavirus, are political hacks and people selling gold. All right. Those are the people who are worrying about the stock market, and the people who are going off and selling off stock, are short-term investors who don't really have, too much of a clue about what they are doing. All right. So let's try and explain this. Anybody who is in the stock market for long term is looking at what's going on at the stock market right now, and they have dollar signs in their eyes because they know what the stock market does. They know how the stock market operates, and so they know that they're not actually losing anything. You only lose something if you actually sell off your stocks during the times when the stock market is going down. Because until you actually sell something off, you haven't actually lost or made a profit on anything. Now everyone going, well, the stock market, it is collapsing. It's going to be a huge disaster. No, we've taken a look at the stock market throughout its history. All right. Now, throughout its history, it's been through the crash of 1929. It's been through Pearl Harbor, world wars, major political upheavals within the United States and around the world. It's been through 9/11. It's been through the housing crash of 2008. And what happened? Well, the stock market always recovered in about 3 months. Those people who panicked and sold off all their stocks, guess what? They locked in their losses by selling off their stock. They took a huge financial hit, while the people that stayed in the stock market, not only did they not lose anything, but because they took a bunch of cash reserves and dumped it in to the stock market, they made out like bandits. They saw huge returns on their investment. Now, the stock market throughout its history, there's only one time it's actually taken longer than 3 months for the stock market to recover, and not only recover, but come back stronger than it was before the downturn. So stop freaking out about the stock market. Like I said, people who are trying to sell you fear on the stock market are doing so for their own gain, because they peddle gold investments, in which gold is a horrible investment. One, its return on investment is only at the rate of inflation. Now, over the past, period of time, under the Obama administration, I guess it was doing a little bit better than average. But all in all, throughout the history of gold, it's only kept at about the rate of inflation. And by the way, if an economy crashes, people do not go to gold as a means of purchasing or as a means of currency. They go to the barter system, where they exchange food, water, and clothing. That's what happens when economies crash. If you look through history, you'll be able to see this. So relax, okay? Now, there's also a political reason, and we'll get to that in a moment, of why people are trying to spread as much fear and as much hype about the coronavirus and its effects. But first, let's go through here and take a look at what Trump said, from the Oval Office speech, because Trump is the one who is actually acting like an adult in this situation. Now, before I play this, I will say that throughout the speech, there were some errors, but Trump was reading a script from a teleprompter. All right, so so some of the, inaccurate information that comes out later on after, the clip that I played, was more of a speech writer, problem, whoever loaded the teleprompter, but all in all, Trump is the one who is acting like the adult and the only one actually doing something to stem the issue of the coronavirus. So let's go take a look at this, and then let's dive in to the problem of the coronavirus itself.
At the very start of the outbreak, we instituted sweeping travel restrictions on China and put in place the first federally mandated quarantine in over 50 years. We declared a public health emergency and issued the highest level of travel warning on other countries as the virus spread its horrible infection. And taking early, intense action, we have seen dramatically fewer cases of the virus in the United States than are now present in Europe. The European Union failed to take the same precautions and restrict travel from China and other hotspots. As a result, a large number of new clusters in the United States were seeded by travelers from Europe. After consulting with our top government health professionals, I have decided to take several strong but necessary actions to protect the health and well-being of all Americans. To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days. The new rules will go into effect Friday at midnight. These restrictions will be adjusted subject to conditions on the ground. There will be exemptions for Americans who have undergone appropriate screenings, and these prohibitions will not only apply to the tremendous amount of trade and cargo, but various other things as we get approval. Anything coming from Europe to the United States is what we are discussing. These restrictions will also not apply to the United Kingdom.
Okay, so Trump's actions there are, completely appropriate. They're, what you should be doing during a pandemic, cutting off travel, closing borders, those type of things. Now, the left, doesn't really like what Trump is doing because, it really highlights the failures of the left, both past and present, to deal with major outbreaks and issues. Before we get into that, let's remind us how the pandemic, got started here. China set forth the global coronavirus crisis into motion. And what they did is, as you know, China is an authoritarian government. And so as the outbreak was starting off in China, they did everything that they tried to do to cover it up, hide it, and then, spin the news reports that are coming out to try and downplay it. And importantly, Beijing was leveraging the clout that it had within international organizations. International organizations tend to be, dominated by a bunch of left-wing liberal globalists. And China was leveraging its clout within these international organizations, to spin the news, downplay it, and try and position itself as a global leader, in the world community that is, responsible and able to handle, what was going on. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. And so what had happened is the outbreak was able to spread because there was a downplaying about the entire risk of it. Now, here's where we get into the failures of liberals and their globalist agendas. So when the outbreak finally, became known, to the world community, what had happened? Trump immediately took actions. He didn't drag his feet for 6 months like Obama did. He took immediate action to restrict travel from the areas affected, mainly China. Now, unfortunately, what he didn't realize was that European leaders dominated almost entirely by the left, except for those who have now successfully completed Brexit. But those who are in charge of the European Union and European states, what did they do? They did nothing. They did an Obama. They decided that protecting their population was not important. So they continued to have open borders, unrestricted, travel into their country, without any screening or any concerns about what was going on. Now, as that was happening, people from, infected areas and people, who were infected by other people along the way, into European travel, they got infected. Well, we do have, easy travel between the United States and Europe. We do have a close ally. And so, while we were restricting travel from infected areas, taking the responsible and decisive and quick action, the liberal left that is in charge and dominates the government of Europe, did nothing. They dragged their feet. And then as people, were traveling back and forth between the United States and Europe, guess what? Because Europe didn't do anything to protect themselves, that's what allowed the virus to get a foothold within the United States. And as it has, Trump has gone through to take even more decisive action. And going through and trying to do the best he can to protect the United States. And he has done more than any liberal has, or any Democrat had done in his place during past outbreaks and pandemics. And the left, their whole, narrative is just election politics. Right? They're out there trying to scare and fear-mongering everyone because they think this is going to be something that's going to help swing the election. And, there are some indications that might be right, but that's just because people are panicking with over a bunch of misinformation. Now, I'm not saying that the coronavirus, it doesn't have its dangers, right? It's just a matter of putting it into perspective, because basically, if you're alive, anything you do has danger. You could slip and fall down the steps. You can get influenza. There are people who die from it, people who, just spend a couple of days at home and boom, they're back to good health. Getting in your car. So it's not that it's not dangerous. It's just a matter of how dangerous is it in reality to basically everything else throughout your normal life. And as far as we can tell, if you're, in generally good health and you're, not a senior citizen, chances are, this is not really going to be, all that bad for you. It's not going to be, a big killer. Yes, it may suck, while you go through and, get better. But, in general, if you're healthy and, not a senior citizen, the survival rate is pretty high. I believe it's like less than 1%. Now as you get older, 60 and above, the older that you get, the bigger your risk of dying from it becomes. So when we go through and we take a look at it, in my past episodes, I've gone through past epidemics or pandemic outbreaks and compared it to the influenza, and we realized that the hype was much more than the reality. But what is the driving force behind the, hyping up of the coronavirus? Well, it is the election politics. And why is it that they are doing this? Well, part of it is, attacking Trump. The other part of it is if they can, help, create a financial crisis, then they get to, use this in two ways to help their ability, to try and win the 2020 election. In fact, here's a great clip that sums up everything that you need to know about why the left and the media is responding the way they are to the coronavirus.
This economy is going pretty well. We have to, what? Why is that funny?
It is going well for now.
For now, right. That's my, thank you. That's my question. I feel like the bottom has to fall out at some point. And by the way, I'm hoping for it, because I think one way you get rid of Trump is a crashing economy. Yeah. So please bring on the recession. Yeah. Sorry if that hurts people, but it's either root for a recession or you lose your democracy.
Yes, that is pretty much all you need to know about the media's overhyping of the coronavirus and, its constant focus on, what's going on in the stock market right now, because they want to be able to go off and attack Trump. And how do we know this? Well, let's take a look at, the Democrats' response. They're basically criticizing Trump, every action that Trump is taking, which is actually appropriate actions on how you stop the spread of a pandemic, and how you keep, the citizens of our country safe, by preventing those from affected areas from being able to travel into the country. And the fact that they keep criticizing that while their only solution is, hygiene 101. Wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. Well, who isn't doing that anyways? I mean, that's one of the first things I taught my kids when I was potty training them, is that every time you go to the restroom, you do not leave until you wash your hands. And yet, they're going off and acting like this is some new information. It's basic hygiene 101. I saw a great meme on the internet that said, a lot of us thought we'd have flying cars by 2020. Turns out we're still trying to teach people to wash their hands. I mean, this isn't rocket science. Basic hygiene is their solution. And, and they say, we're going to keep open borders. Open borders is how we're going to go through this. And now the media, seeing how Trump's responses were decisive, quick, and responsible, and has led, to, there being so few cases in the United States, and that the cases that did slip in came from liberally run countries in Europe, are trying to find a way not only to try and say what Trump is doing is never enough, but they're trying to twist and spin everything to try and make it look like it's Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats that are leading the way in the coronavirus response. I mean, let's take a look here from Politico, our BSico. Pelosi ignores Trump taunt as she steers through another crisis. I mean, seriously, who actually believes this junk? Just hours before Trump had taken his latest shot at Pelosi in a morning tweet. But that didn't deter the speaker, who huddled with Mnuchin for a 30-minute meeting in her office. The two also chatted on the phone twice Wednesday, and Pelosi is now on the verge of pushing through a massive stimulus bill that could earn GOP support as well as Trump's signature. For any other leader, the rapid turnaround on the recovery plan would be a Herculean feat at best. But for Pelosi, successfully negotiating a multi-billion-dollar economic package with a hostile and often antagonistic Trump administration was just another day in the speaker's suite. I mean, seriously, they're trying to go off. Nancy Pelosi hasn't done anything. In fact, she's dragged her feet. She purposely delayed action on bills funding, the coronavirus response in order to run attack ads. But Politico trying to go off and, spin all of this as if it's Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats that are leading the way. Of course, what they tend to forget is that the Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi, have been sending out tweets and all of that directed at Trump. And then they get on Trump for his response and acting like the Democrats are the mature, responsible ones leading the way, all ignoring that the Democrats are usually the ones that are starting the conflict, right? So another thing that has gone on is shortly after, Trump had given that Oval Office speech in which he details, the right actions to be taken, which, by the way, one of the things that, is later brought up in a hearing on Capitol Hill is the fact that, they're already, completed phase 1, I believe they said, of a vaccine. And, because of Trump, cutting all the bureaucracy, red tape, and, all of that, in the process of creating a vaccine, they're already, getting ready to start human trials on the vaccine. They said, within a month, which is the fastest we have ever gotten from the start of an outbreak to an initial, human testing of a potential vaccine. It's never gone this fast, but the media doesn't want to point that out. They don't want to bring that up. They don't want to point out that Trump has handled this more effectively and more competently than any prior administration during an outbreak and didn't drag his feet like Obama did. But of course, Sanders and Biden want to come out and say, oh, that is a completely inappropriate response and answer, as they try to claim that Trump's, coronavirus response is incompetent and reckless. In a direct rebuttal to President Donald Trump, NBC reports, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders deliver somber and at times searing speeches on Thursday, slamming the administration's handling of the coronavirus pandemic and detailing how they believe the government should be responding to the crisis, which how the government should be responding is exactly what Trump is doing. If there ever was a time in modern history for our country where we are all in this together, this is that moment, Sanders said in Burlington, Vermont, after suggesting the death toll may exceed that of American service members during World War II. Now is the time for solidarity. Really? Really? So you're going out there saying that this virus is so bad that it's going to kill more people than World War II in the United States, and yet you're criticizing the idea of shutting down travel, closing up the borders, stopping people from affected areas from being able to enter the country? And your response would have been what? Nothing, really. Just kind of drag your feet and let the media try and, cover up. Because that's what the media did under the Obama administration. They followed him around with a pooper scooper trying to clean up his messes that he made all over the place. And now they're trying to clean up the fact that it was, left-wing policies and the left-wing, feet dragging and open borders that allowed this to spread throughout Europe and make it to the United States. So they keep going off and saying, no, nothing is, ever enough, even though Trump is doing more than any other administration has and quicker during an outbreak. And of course, how else do they attack Trump's response? Oh, HuffPost. Joe Biden rips Trump over coronavirus xenophobia and unveils his own plan. Oh yes, restricting travel, protecting American citizens by restricting travel from areas where there are known outbreaks and infections, and preventing places and people from places that have infected from coming to the United States. That's xenophobia. There could be no legitimate national security reason, no legitimate health concern reason, no legitimate reason whatsoever to restrict travel from outside the United States of non-U.S. citizens from affected areas. No. There is no legitimate reason. It can only be xenophobia. That is the only reason that they can think of for restricting travel. Yes, it is xenophobia to say, hey, if you live in an infected area, for the protection of our own citizens, until the, crisis, pandemic and all of that subsides, we don't want people from infected areas coming to the United States and causing a pandemic within our own borders. But they want to go off and claim that that's xenophobia. And of course, they're sending out additional tweets as well. In fact, if you just mention, the origins of this virus, according to Nancy Pelosi, that is bigoted. That's a bigoted statement which spreads misinformation and blames Asians and Asian American communities for coronavirus, makes us all less safe. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You're going off and saying, just mentioning where this outbreak started, that's racism and that's xenophobia and that's, bigoted. It's the fact that the left isn't taking any of this with any, sense of, how do I want to say this? The fact that they are completely unserious regarding their response and how it's all about political attacks, lets you know that this is being vastly overhyped. Now, of course, they're also pissed off because maybe, their overhyping of the coronavirus has led to a Trump victory. So as Fox News is reporting, the Supreme Court gives Trump a win by allowing Remain in Mexico policy to continue. Thank you, leftists. I mean, if there is one good thing that has come out of you guys overhyping the coronavirus and fear-mongering and politicizing the entire situation, is that the idea that the Remain in Mexico policy does have a national security reason behind it. and Trump has every right to implement that, you just bolster his argument. So you may have gone through and turned, this into an easy win. Now, of course, the Supreme Court, if they were following the Constitution and the law, were always going to rule this way anyways. But the fact that the media has gone off and overhyped the coronavirus has made it so that that victory was that much easier. Thank you. And of course, Joe Biden has his response, going off, Donald Trump's remain in Mexico policy is dangerous, inhumane. It goes against everything we stand for as a nation of immigrants. You know what, leftists? Pick a lane. All right? Pick a lane. All right? Either enforcing immigration laws, which, by the way, Biden, weren't you in the Senate, when some of the immigration laws were passed? Weren't you part of helping develop that? And don't you realize that the president is sworn to uphold and enforce the laws? But in any event, so pick a lane. Is this, coronavirus dangerous? Is it going to wipe out nearly half the population? Is this a serious national security threat? Or is it still safe enough that you could have open borders? With absolutely zero travel restrictions anywhere. Pick a lane, because you can't have it both ways. You can't say that this is a deadly, serious outbreak and then turn right around and then go, oh, no, but we should be able to freely travel and anybody can come within our country regardless of where they're from. Because we don't know how many people from China and Europe have traveled, to Mexico or, into South America. How many of those people have been infected as a result? And heck, we don't know how many people, in trying to get around travel restrictions, have flown from China down to, the south of the border and trying to be part of the caravans coming in, trying to seek asylum or claim that they are seeking asylum. We don't know. This is why we have immigration laws, so that we know who's coming in. We can screen them for possible, outbreaks, for diseases that, while having been previously wiped out in the United States, is still, widespread south of the border. And reintroducing those diseases could be huge problems. Now, I'm not saying they're all disease. It doesn't take much, in a situation where, if you have something that's highly contagious, for, 3 to 5 people, in a 6,000, person caravan, starting off sick and then having that, go through and travel, especially when you consider how closely they go through, how much they share, stuff, or have to share, food, water, water bottles, the sexual violence that goes on, in those caravans, and how, much such things can widespread. In fact, there are some diseases that were previously eliminated in the United States that, due to illegal immigration, and the fact that they go to places like California, which are densely populated areas, diseases that have been reintroduced into the United States. So pick a lane. Either this is a grave, serious threat and a threat to our national security, or it's so mild that there's no reason, to close the borders or restrict travel in any way or shape or form. Pick a lane. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, there's no reason not to have open borders, and yet this is, seriously deadly and a threat to national security. All right, you understand how the left is so inconsistent about this, how they contradict themselves. Now, of course, beyond, their, just, blatant blind attacks at trying to say, any, response or reaction or anything is racist, xenophobic, or it's just not enough, no matter how much the response is, the Democrats are also using this as an attempt to be able to pass, their wish list, for them to promote their wish list of things that have absolutely nothing to do with the coronavirus, but claim it is seriously needed in order to address the issue. So you got things like Bernie Sanders, in his response, says that this is a case for Medicare for all. Well, jeepers, let's see here. Europe is, has single payer health care. They, didn't do anything to stop, this. So, the spread of coronavirus into their countries. And they're saying that about 70% of the population is going to get infected. For some reason, government run anything doesn't really sound like a solution for anything at this particular moment. Plus, single payer healthcare sucks. It's, it does not work. It has failed everywhere. Sure, if you have maybe a minor thing, your routine annual checkup, but the moment you need actual healthcare, yet you have something serious, they just deem it unnecessary. So, they're able to keep, their, claimed stats artificially inflated by including death as a positive outcome because it's just in your best interest to die. Or saying, hey, you know what? You don't need that to live. And you know what? You can deal with, the discomfort, that it provides or that it causes. I mean, it is sickening. Even Cory Booker is going in and weighing in a tweet. Too many Americans can't stay at home. If they are sick, so they show up to work and risk passing along their illness to co-workers and the public at large with coronavirus, an urgent public threat. We need paid sick leave now to protect workers and families. We have paid sick leave. It's called PTO, paid time off. Everybody has a certain amount of paid time off during the year. But the Democrats want to create another category of, sick leave. Now, employers are probably looking at this going, yes, 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 please, please, please do sick leave, because here's what's going to happen if you get sick leave, which the Democrats don't want you to really know about. Is that how are companies going to deal with funding sick leave? Easy. They're going to reduce your amount of PTO that you get during the year. So, for instance, let's say, at the last company that I had worked for, I would get, about 5.5 weeks of paid time off during the year, along with, holidays and yada, yada, yada. So if the, Democrats got their paid sick leave, what would happen? Well, depending on how much paid sick leave that they're mandated, let's say they say you need 2 weeks of, paid sick leave. Well, the company would then turn around and go, okay, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. You got 5 weeks of PTO. We're going to reduce that down to 3 weeks of PTO, and we'll put the other 2 weeks into paid sick leave. And companies are, would be looking at that as great. This means, we can still claim you get a generous, time off package, but only instead of being able to pick 5 weeks out of the year to go through and choose when to take off, what most convenient for you, you now lose 2 weeks of PTO that will then get transferred into paid sick leave, which then has restrictions on when you can and can't take it. You can't schedule sick leave, right? So that means you got less time off during the year, in order to relax, enjoy life and all that, because now you're losing PTO as they take your PTO time and put it into paid sick leave, to which, you can't just take off because you can't plan your sickness in advance. But the Democrats, they don't want you to think about those things. No. They want to go off and implement this, paid sick leave, and hope you don't realize how that's going to be taken away from your regular PTO. And by the way, if you have PTO, why are you needing sick leave? I mean, think about this. This is March 12th. We're not even, through the first quarter of the year. Have you really used up all your paid time off? All your, vacation time during the year? I mean, are you using it up already? But they're going, no, you shouldn't have to use your regular paid time off. It's like, Well, what do you think paid time off is for? It's for vacation and sick leave. You use it, to schedule, time off to go on vacation, and you use it so that you don't lose pay when you can't come into work because you're sick. This whole we need sick leave is, one of those things that they pass like, hey, let's pass a law that, outlaws lynching, but murder's already a crime. Well, you know what? We're still just going to, pass this and we'll make it, a double crime. It's like, it's one of those things where they want to pass something and they promote something to make it seem like they're actually doing something. When if you actually take a look at it and analyze it, you realize, hey, we already have this. The only thing that would change between what we have right now with PTO and what they are proposing with sick leave is putting restrictions on when we can and can't take paid time off of work. That's what the Democrats are promoting, but the leftists, they don't realize this. So they're, blindly cheering this on because they don't think. They don't think at all. And of course, AOC. Oh boy. If she gets reelected, it really is amazing, how stupid people can be, in any given district. I mean, this is one of the biggest morons to have ever gotten elected, to public office. And when we take a look at Washington, D.C., that says a lot. So she comes off, and states, this is not a time for half measures. We need to take dramatic action now to stave off the worst public health and economic effects. That includes making moves on paid leave, which we already discussed, debt relief. What does debt relief have to do with health care or dealing with the pandemic? Waiving work requirements. Oh, yes. So the work requirements for receiving, welfare benefits, we must waive that now to address a public health issue. Guaranteeing health care. Well, nobody can be turned away from health care. She means making sure, saying that you shouldn't have to pay health care. Doctors should work for free. Universal basic income, detention relief. What does this have to do with a public health emergency? What does any of this have to, seriously, when you take a look at this, that they're not serious about any of this. That they're not going off and taking any issue seriously. They're just playing politics in order to say we need to pass our wish list. We need to abandon, the election, and we just need to implement the agenda everyone, rejected in 2016. And so they're just going off and playing so much politics, and the amount of people that are falling for this, becoming fearful and going through and, buying up all the toilet paper, which, by the way, I don't even get or understand the whole buying up all the toilet paper thing. This is not, one of those viruses that causes diarrhea. All right. It doesn't cause you to make frequent trips to the bathroom. All right. So what is everyone buying up toilet paper for? Whatever, maybe hand sanitizer, but you know what? If I were to give advice here, and keep in mind, I'm not a medical expert as I give this advice, but if you want something that will be just as effective, or maybe even more effective than what the left is, promoting as things that you should do to protect yourself, or what the government should do to address the crisis, let me give you my how to deal with, viruses, whether that's a cold or a flu. And it has worked for me pretty well. All right? Go to the liquor store and buy your favorite alcohol, right? And just spend the next couple of days, drunk, or if you feel like you're coming down with something, just take a few days off of work and just drink all day. Because one, alcohol is a disinfectant, right? Yep, it is. And 2, alcohol is a poison. So you're disinfecting and poisoning the virus. So when I get a cold, I drink heavily, for, a day or 2. And after that, I'm pretty much cured. Grandpa's liquor cabinet, alcohol, it tends to work pretty good. And you're poisoning and weakening the virus. Of course, some of you are going, well, you're, weakening your own immune system. Yeah, but you're killing off the virus, and it's also a disinfectant as it goes through your bloodstream. Now, like I said, I'm not a health expert. I'm not saying that if you just go off and get drunk a lot, that's going to save you or, whatever. But I'm just saying from my own personal experience, how I've dealt with flus and, colds, alcohol has done pretty well for me. It's the only medicine that I've ever really needed. And plus, it really helps you sleep. And all that sleep will help you get over, viruses pretty well. So, in any event, I find it more effective than NyQuil. But that's my non-medical, non-expert advice on how to deal with this. But it seems like that would be more effective than almost anything the Democrats are promoting as how they would handle an outbreak. Of course, as we go through and we take a look at, how they're covering the stock market and the stock market, going down and everything. Well, the Democrats have a solution. If we start hitting a recession, they got a plan to, to finish off and destroy the economy, which is, hey, if we hit a recession, we can go with the Green New Deal. Yes, there you go. If we hit to the point where we're in a recession, why not kill off what is left of the economy by implementing a Green New Deal to which there is no practicality to it? There is no financial feasibility to it, right? It's a huge disaster. It's like, what's the answer to all the problems created by government? More government. Ugh. But anyways, moving on past the coronavirus here. And I get it. Some of you are like, know that I'm looking at a screen, down here, some notes and, reminding me, what clips are what. But also when I look down here, I got this little, keyboard, and this keyboard controls the computer. So, while I'm actually recording this, all the editing is happening. I don't go into a video editor later, to go back and add the graphics, add the clips and all of that. I use the keyboard in order to control the computer to which the camera and everything is set up for in order to, go through and produce this in one take. So I treat this though, like it's a live stream, even though it's pre-recorded. In the sense that I don't edit anything out. So you get me as you would if I was live. All right. And maybe I will take, some of my, shows and stream them as if they're live, but the reason why I don't stream it live, even though I give you the same thing as what I would live, is because of how late at night, I do the recording. Otherwise, if I tried doing this during the normal part of the day, you would hear, my 3-year-old stomping around all over the place, right? And, the lights here, I'm still getting used to the lights, so that's why you may sometimes see me squinting along with my contacts sometimes give me some problems. Okay, so anyways, moving along here. There's things that I've been watching, and, I've been reviewing some videos from the Young Turks. Now, there is an operation where, where you could see liberals, even though it's not all that successful, right? Their success has been primarily due to, all the, leftist, millionaires and billionaires and YouTube propping them up. Right? They didn't really get, a whole lot, on their own. I'd say, I wouldn't be surprised to find out if, years ago when they first started, if they were buying views and buying subscribers. I mean, we know how that goes. And, I wonder if that would work today. I don't know. maybe I'll try it, do what some of the people have done in the past to get through the algorithm. But, chances are I won't. But anyways, so after they went through and they were able to fake it until they made it, where, they were able to go off and make it seem like they had a much bigger audience than what they did, and were able to go through, go with our agenda or else, and all that. Then they started getting multi-million-dollar donations, and then YouTube started propping them up. And even with all that backing, all that financing, and YouTube promoting them, over-promoting them, they're still not as big as a lot of, conservatives who have grown organically, who actually had to do so by talent. But in any event, I was going through and I was watching, some of the Young Turks stuff, because there are a bunch of crazy psycho left, and and there are a bunch of lunatics over there. I mean, if you want to know, what the craziest of the crazy, left wingers are thinking, this is one of the places that you would go and monitor. And they're also complete hypocrites, right? Now, they're just as bad and hypocritical as any news network like CNN. They're horrible. So I came across this and I had thought, wow, this is funny to hear it coming from these guys.
Like, one of the hardest things, if you pay attention to politics and if you follow for a long time, the unfortunate reality is that sometimes the person that you back loses. And for some people, that is unacceptable. And so there will never be a time when their candidate just loses an election. There will always be something that caused it other than the other person getting more votes. And I would just beg of you, please do not retreat to that, because that is the way of the devil, okay? That you learn nothing. And so that only, like, to the extent that you can have a positive impact in the future, you will be nullifying that by believing that you are always a winner. And if you lose, it's because it was stolen.
Yes, that was funny, hearing that from the Young Turks, who spent years, along with the rest of the left-wing media, claiming that the only reason Trump is president is not because he was legitimately elected, but because of Russia. A Russia conspiracy, Russia collusion. Now they're going off and, trying to defend the Democrats in the primaries, and the Bernie bros trying to claim that, the primaries being stolen from Bernie Sanders, and, and they're trying to keep their party together in order to try and, keep a coalition in hopes of being able to beat Trump. But back, during the 2016, election, and during the whole Mueller and all the Russia hoax, they were one of the big promoters of that. They were going off calling, Trump, a Russian asset, and how Hillary Clinton was really the legitimate president, if it wasn't for the Russians. So hearing the people that have promoted hoaxes in the past, go off and tell their own people that, hey, when it comes to our side, we don't want to engage in that. Just because your guy doesn't get, all the votes doesn't mean it's stolen from them. But then when their side loses, no, this wasn't a legitimate president. It was, the Russians. It was, daddy's friends on the Supreme Court, with Bush. And, go on down the line. They always have an excuse as far as why a Republican president is never legitimate. So, that is kind of funny. But let's also go off and take a look at a couple other hypocritical pieces from the Young Turks. All right, I believe this is clip 4.
Honestly, every time I bring it up, I feel bad because it's someone who is experiencing mental decline, and I don't like pointing that out about people, right? Like, because you feel like you're saying something insulting, but I'm not saying it to insult him. I'm saying it because he's running to be president of the United States, and you need someone who's not experiencing mental decline.
Okay, so here it is. And, of course, they're big, Bernie supporters over there at the Young Turks and everything. So they're going off and saying, well, I don't like pointing out, people's mental decline, but, I don't want to, well, you know what? That is pretty interesting. You don't, people over at the Young Turks, not wanting to point out people's mental decline.
I think we have been seeing a lot of signs of deterioration. As you've noticed, the back and forth about race and essentially.
Well, I'm not going to, play all that, but for all you audio listeners, that is, the Young Turks bringing on, some sort of psychological expert to promote the theory that, Trump is declining mentally as they were trying to push the removal through the 25th Amendment, which is interesting because I thought, you didn't want to, point out people's mental declines and all of that. Now, here's the thing. Trump is not mentally declining. He is sharper than Bernie and Biden could ever hope to be. Right? He is one of the sharpest people in politics. And what scares, the Democrats the most is right now they got two establishment people running on their side, and they're trying to claim, no. These are outsiders. These are outsiders. Bernie has been in, the Senate for how many decades? And you're running him as, he's not the establishment. He is an outsider running for change. What has he done, in the past few decades? What legislation has he sponsored? What has he actually accomplished? I've been in the Senate for 30 years, but now that I'm running for president, I'm finally going to fight for change? Really? And Biden's the same thing. I've been in government almost my entire adult life. But now that I'm, in my 70s and I am running for the president, I am the change you are looking for. There's nothing like having someone who's been in government for decades to come out and to show you how to, promote change, right? Okay, so, oops, forgot to go through. This is one of those things. I'll leave it in here. Forgot to turn off the beeper. I try to keep a little bit of a time, on this so I don't go over. But, like I said, it's one of those things where, this is why I don't edit anything. You get to kind of see all the bloopers and the falls, but there's nothing like having, establishment people who have spent, their entire life and entire career in government coming out and promising you that they're going to be the change agent, the change that you're looking for. They're going to be the ones that are going to change government, even though their entire record in history has not shown anything to, support that. And yet Trump, his one and only time of running for office was for the presidency. He was an actual outsider, an actual change agent. And he has been more successful than anybody we have seen since Reagan. And there are a lot of people going out there going, Trump is actually on course to become more successful than Reagan. And with them running two establishment candidates who are trying to pretend like they're outsiders and change agents, they are worried. This is why they're over promoting, are overhyping the coronavirus, the stock market, attacking, every which way they can. And no matter what Trump does, it's always the wrong course of action, while they provide zero actual plans relevant to the situation. All right. So that's it for this particular episode. I'd like to thank you so much for your time and attention. If you want to make sure that you get every episode and that you're able to get it on the go, because not everybody has the ability to just watch, videos, on YouTube, BitChute, or wherever else, go to, iTunes or anywhere else that you listen to podcasts and download, this show, the Jacob Johnston Show. That is actually the old cover. I need to update that with the new cover. It pretty much takes out the pictures of me and, the cartoon characters and, you'll be able to see it. The Jacob Johnston Show, wherever it is that you download or listen to podcasts. That way you can get the show on the go without having to sit, and you'll be able to listen, to everything. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I will be back again